Cheyenne, Cheyenne, hop on my pony from old Cheyenne.
I had a fun time coming here and talking about a really interesting topic a lot of people don't know much about, and that's the history of aviation in our city. From the year of 1911 all the way until 1949, Cheyenne was the principal aviation center of the Rocky Mountain region. It's really interesting to think that so many interesting and wonderful things happened here, from the Transcontinental Air Reliability Test in 1919, which proved that airplanes could fly across the continent even in the worst of weather, to the establishment of the first transcontinental airmail service in the world. And Cheyenne had an important part to play because its location put it at the heart of the continent, at the lowest crossing of the Rocky Mountains, and also along the Union Pacific Railroad, which served as an iron compass for the pilots so they could follow that from Chicago to San Francisco. As it is, it's been a wonderful experience to try and study the history of the men and the people that were in the airmail service, but even beyond that, thinking that Bill Boeing had some of his first planes designed to fly here through our countryside, right around Cheyenne, and that his company was the first to hire stewardesses, and that he trained them here in our city, the very first. This is only the beginning of so many wonderful stories about how our relationship with aviation, with companies like United Airlines, continued through World War II, where we had the largest modification center in the Rocky Mountain region, turning out 46% of the B-17s used during the war. This is an amazing place with so many amazing stories. To be able to try and relay that to people, to even give them a glimpse of the aviation glory that was our cities, was a real honor. There is so much to know. We've had people that have been involved with aviation and have made such a contribution to the mode of transportation we've taken for granted that it almost boggles belief and certainly begs for it. The fact that we had people like Jack Knight, who lived here in Cheyenne, that flew the first transcontinental airmail flight at night from North Platte, Nebraska, all the way to Chicago in the middle of a blizzard. But he was one of our airmail pilots that was headquartered here in Cheyenne. He's the first man to do something so daring, but he made night flying of the airmails possible. Jack Knight is one of the famous airmail pilots, but I'd also say I'd be very interested to convey to people the boldness of a woman by the name of Ellen Church, who approached Boeing Air Transport, who suggested that maybe if you had a woman back in the plane, that would make things easier on passengers and they would enjoy flying a lot more. And she was the first stewardess. So we have Ellen Church, we have Jack Knight, but we have many myriads of people that were craftsmen, wizards at being able to put things together on airplanes that had never been seen before in aviation. The fact that we had the first de-icing boots that helped planes fly through ice storms without having their wings ice up was installed here in Cheyenne. The first variable pitch propellers that were ever installed on aircraft, that's almost unheard of having a plane that doesn't have that capability now, was installed here in Cheyenne. Everything from the heaters that kept people warm to the communication that helped pilots communicate with the ground and vice versa. This is the type of stuff that happened here. That's a really hard one to answer. Having grown up here, there's so many wonderful memories that I had about being in this city. I know that back in 1985 when we suffered our flood, I was a very young man, only about 15 years old, and I was enthralled by how people in this community pulled together even in the most adverse of times. It just so happens, though, my opportunity to come back to Cheyenne after having to leave for more than a decade was probably the finest memory that I have about the city. It was wonderful to come home. Since I've been here, I've grown in my engagement with the city of Cheyenne. As a young man, I was happy to be here, but then also happy to see what the rest of the world had to offer. After I did that, I was very pleased to see just what Cheyenne meant to me. And now that I've come back here to Cheyenne, I've been able to work at the Old West Museum and explore the wonderful history of Cheyenne frontier days. But I've also been able to explore the absolutely magnificent stories that the people here in Cheyenne wrote through the era of aviation, but also through the eras of prohibition. There have just been so many wonderful tales that can be told, and it's a story that needs to be shared, and I'm so happy that I get a chance to do it. I think Cheyenne today stands at a very interesting crossroads. We're at a point where we look back on our past and we're very fond of everything that our predecessors have been able to accomplish. But I see it as somebody that's been able to grow up here and then be able to come back, that I see so much potential. We have so many new young people that are coming up now that what I would encourage them to do is, if they get the chance to stay here, to make the city their own and to make the difference that they want to see, and they can make the community and continue the great history and the great tale that this town has always had.